everyone. My name is Charmaine Swannefelder. I am the founder of Synergy Talent Solutions, and I am going to focus on one of our integrated vendor partners today. The vendor partner we're focusing on is ITDA Assessments, Leader Competence Improvement. And with me in the studio, I have Dr. Rick Fulwiler. Now, it's an interesting story. Magda du Preez, Dr. Magda du Preez, who founded ITD Assessments, introduced me to Dr. Fulwiler. And basically, Magda's program uses some of the tools that was designed by Dr. Fulwiler, because we found that mastering your listening skills is key to making good decisions. And the Leader Competence Improvement Program by Magda focuses on helping leaders develop and to become better decision makers. So today we'd like to talk to Dr. Fulwiler about some of his research and ask him a couple of questions to provide some guidance to us on leader development. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Dr. Fulwiler. We're very happy to have him in the studio with us today. So Dr. Fulwiler is president of Transformational Leadership Associates. It's a consultancy that specializes in increasing individual effectiveness, engaging the workforce, and improving organizational capability and results. He also holds a faculty appointment at the Harvard School of Public Health, where he's course director for their Leadership and Management Skills course. So Dr. Fulwiler has an international reputation. He has published widely and is a frequent speaker at conferences. So Dr. Fulwiler, we are honored to have you in the studio with us today. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Fulwiler, we've got a couple of questions for you. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is, if you're thinking about your work in the arena of leadership and the many challenges we know that leaders are facing at the moment, with all the uncertainty and the disruption impacting organizations, is there any advice that you could share with leaders? Some of the things that you think in your experience they should be focused on to navigate through all of this?
Yes, and I think you're right. If we put this in the context of the COVID world we've lived in, we're living in now, and we're probably going to be living in for a while. It's not going to go away. We'd love it to go away, but it's not. And I guess I would start with a rhetorical question to the leaders of any enterprise. And I use the word enterprise because that could embody a for-profit business, a nonprofit organization, an academic institution, a hospital. Wherever you are, whatever you're leading, you'll be in what I will call an enterprise. And I just think that one of the things that these leaders need to do is think about the impact of our current world, our past world, our current world, and our future world on their enterprise in three different ways. First, the actual success of the enterprise. But second, they ought to be thinking about their employees. And third, are they thinking about their customers? Because we're going through something we've never gone through before. And let me use a restaurant as an example. It's a micro example, but take a restaurant. Some restaurants are closed, out of business, no business. Some restaurants are closed, waiting to open. Some restaurants are partially open. Some restaurants are just doing takeout food. So that's the business impact. But think about the impact on the employees. Some employees aren't working anymore. Some are working part-time, but there's a real impact on employees. But third, think of the impact on customers. Some customers can't wait to get back in that restaurant, but take my wife and I, we'll be reticent to go back into restaurants. So you really have to think of your business or your enterprise, your employees, and your customers. And the primary focus, however, Charmaine, really needs to be on your employees. And where I'm coming here is, are you demonstrating a sense of what I call mutual self-interest, MSI? mutual self-interest. So that's what I think they need to be focused on mostly. Their business for one, their customers for the other, but mainly their employees. And are they really looking at the mutual self-interest of the business, their employees, and their customers?
Okay, I think that is some sound advice, and really it is your people are the ones that help carry your business forward. So I think that's great advice. One of the other things that come to mind is, given your research in and work helping leaders to really embody transformational leadership every day, I was wondering if there were any themes that you might have noticed, what basically leaders in general desire to improve on.
Yeah, that's really a good question, and really it is, and there it's understanding the concept of an engaged workforce. If you could put the first slide up for me, I appreciate it. This isn't going to be a slideshow, so there won't be a lot of slides, just two. And if you put this slide up, Gallup, I think we're all familiar with Gallup surveys, and every other year Gallup does an extensive survey on the state of the American workplace and to determine the level of engagement of the workforce. And I think this is where we really have to focus, and this is an opportunity area to focus on. And if you'll look at this, it says 33% of the employees in the US are engaged. Then the 70% number is that's what's in the world's best. So the average company or the average school, the average hospital has 33% of their workforce engaged. Those with high performance work systems will come close to 70%. I was fortunate. I grew up in a company called Procter & Gamble, and they, with the help of Dr. Drucker, moved into a high performance work system. So I spent 28 years in a high performance work system laboratory, if you will. But let's go back to these numbers. What Gallup found was 33% of the workforce is engaged. 51% of the workforce is not engaged. They're just kind of showing up, getting their paycheck, going home, that kind of thing. And 16% are actively disengaged or dysfunctional. Now think about that. If you add up 51 and 16, that gives us a 67% opportunity to make an improvement in the number of workers that we have in the engaged workforce. And what a tremendous opportunity. And the key there to engaging more of the workforce is transformational leadership. And if you could give me the second slide, please. And
Sure.
in this slide is a very simple slide, and it kind of just shows the difference between a transactional situation and what you see there. If my artistic talent was stick people, is that in a transactional traditional work site, you're really using those people from the shoulders down. And by golly, that'll get you about average, maybe even below average, but not better than average. But if you go over to the one on the right, you'll see a great difference. And what's that difference? You have their head and heart in the game. And I think you'll all agree with me, whether you've got a classroom, whether you've got a team, whether you've got a work team, whatever you've got, if you've got a great percentage of those people on that team or in that workforce with their head and heart in the game, they'll deliver above average and they'll tend to deliver excellence. Now, where am I going with this? I've had the opportunity to work with the executive committees of a number of companies. These are multi-billion-dollar companies. And what I found with these executive committees, these are the top people, they tend to be hardwired more to be transformational than they're hardwired to be more transactional. And by that, I mean, they tend to be numbers focused, top line sales, bottom line profits, cases out the door, number of patients treated today, number of students graduated last year. Those are all numerics, and they're very important. I'm not saying it's not important, but if you look at these groups of leaders of large organizations, they tend to be highly transactional. And what we're trying to do is help them understand some performance characteristics that can move them over to be a bit more transformational. That's going to be the key to engaging their workforce. An opportunity to work with a company, I will mention their name, Cintas Corporation, and they want to become one of the safest companies in the world. And so they discovered that they felt they're being too transactional and not transformational enough. And they put all of their executives and executive committee in for a 4-hour workshop on learning what are some of the performance characteristics that would help them be more transformational. And then these leaders could in turn transition and transfer that knowledge down into the workforce. And so that's what they did, and they did it very effectively. Now, to become more transformational really requires the application of a set of performance characteristics. And when I started doing research on this, if you start reading the books, there's maybe 25 to 30 characteristics that would describe a transformational leader. And I narrowed those down to the critical 5 or the critical few. And if leaders can simply try to grow their performance characteristics in these 5 areas, or pick 3 of the 5 if you want, they will become more transformational, and they'll increase the engagement of the workforce. And those characteristics, I'll just list them. I'm not going to say anything about them at this time. Listening, communicating, being collegial, engaging, and caring. Am I really listening to my people? Am I communicating in their language, not my language? Am I behaving as though I'm better than they are, or I'm one of them? Mutual self-interest. Am I engaging when I make my plant tours, when I do my tours in the hospitals, wherever I'm going? Am I engaging at their level? And finally, am I demonstrating I truly care about them? When you can start performing with these performance characteristics, you will be achieving mutual self-interest, and you will be achieving an engaged workforce.
I think that's so profound, because I was wondering whether you would agree, if you don't have that engagement by your workforce, you are probably seeing much higher numbers of turnover. You're probably seeing less productive employees, because like you mentioned, their hearts aren't necessarily in it. They are complying to what the organization is pushing at that stage. But I think you can achieve so much more if you've got the hearts of people engaged, because that's really where I think you see all the individual parts starting to kick in, and people are just more productive, they're more innovative, they're really contributing and looking for how they could solve problems. It's just a different scenario. Are there any other results that you see of lack of engagement that leaders should be concerned about?
Well, I can go back to a particular plant, and in this particular plant, a highly transformational leader took over. And I don't have the data right in front of me, so I'm going to grab a few snippets from it. I do remember all of it, but not the exact percentages. But the focus here for this particular company was in reducing the number of accidents or injuries. So once this transformational leader took over, and by the way, he was previously a Marine, a tough little Marine, but he understood transformational leadership. And what did it do? He reduced the injuries from 8 per 100 employees to 0.8 per 100 employees. Wow. The one you mentioned was turnover.
Yeah.
He reduced their turnover rate 71%. Just imagine just the cost and training and the expertise you lose in that regard. And he increased the profit of that 25%, and he increased the cost of lost materials 25%. There were other, and my point is, not only do you achieve excellence with health and safety, you achieve excellence in what I call all these functional outputs: cost, quality, production, turnover, customer satisfaction. And so yes, you do see a lot of those examples. Well, I should say see a lot of those examples, because you don't see a lot of the numerics as good as this particular example, but it's out there.
No, I think that's a really good example. And I think I've seen numbers like lack of engagement could cost organizations up to 34% of the individual salary. But I think it's amazing how quickly everything adds up. And I think to the example that you just shared with us, there's so many touch points. If you can really engage the heart of individuals, it has a positive spin-off on so many things, and especially what the leaders like to measure, the real profits of the organization. Everything's got a high cost to it. So it's really, I think, a essential thing to focus on.
Yeah, and it's not unusual. Like I said, these executive committees, they tend to be hardwired transactional, and so they've got to make that shift. Now, some aren't. I've had CEOs at Procter & Gamble that were way over to the transactional side, but one of my favorites had a wonderful balance of transformational leadership.
Great. So, Dr. Fulwiler, would you say that you've got perhaps any advice to share with leaders that struggle with similar development gaps at the moment?
Well, I guess my advice, Charmaine, is to be aware, and where if I'm a leader of an enterprise, I really have to be honest and look at my enterprise and say, are we too transformational? That's my advice: is do an assessment. Magda's got assessment tools. I've got assessment tools. If you want to have a professional assessment, but if you don't want to have a professional assessment, and again, I'll use Cintas. They did their own assessment. In other words, their executive committee looked at themselves. They looked in the mirror, and they said, we're too transactional to get where we want to get with health and safety. So it needs to start with self-awareness. Where are we? And then accepting what you see. If you feel you're too transactional, what are you going to do about it? Around that. And then you have to decide, can you do that internally? Do you want external help? But just understanding the difference between transactional and transformational leadership, knowing you have to become a little bit more transformational to get those heads and heart in the game. And I remember when Drucker and P&G and Drucker said, he said, you have to treat your workforce as more than a cog in a wheel.
Oh yeah.
It was just so profound. In other words, a lot of companies, they're there to make that wheel go around. If you treat them like the whole wheel, you'll get a much better output.
Yes, I think that's really good advice. I want to go back to the point on assessments. I think a multi-method approach works really well, to have different perspectives, to get a better insight into who you really are and what's going on and what is the impact on the people that you work with. I think some people are very scared of doing things like 360 questionnaires that give you that third-party view. But I've often found that, if handled in the right way, I find people are often very pleasantly surprised, because I frequently find that leaders underrate themselves. And sometimes it's just a nice confirmation about what you are doing right, and to look where you can really move the needle to be more impactful and more successful as a leader. So I'm glad you mentioned the point about assessments, because I think it's really hard to start, setting any objective development plans for yourself that is really going to make impact on the business without a objective measure that helps to inform your journey.
Right. Well, that's true. And I think, just as I said, the awareness, the realization, where are we? What is my style? And where do I really want to go? And do I want an engaged workforce? And so if you're saying you want an engaged workforce, then you have to do something to get it. And and it just doesn't come by saying, I want an engaged workforce. It takes a real change in leadership style, all the way from the top down to the shop floor.
Yes, it's almost like it's not something you can command. It's something you have to earn.
Yeah, yes. You have to want it.
Well, Dr. Fulwiler, we've come to the end of our time, but I want to thank you so much for spending time with us today and answering some questions. If there's any questions by the audience, please, you can reach out to info@synergytalents.solutions and we will redirect your questions and answer them as best we can. Dr. Fulwiler, thank you very much for your time today. Very much appreciated. And if you please hit like if you enjoy the kind of content we share today. Mention in the comments if there's anything else you'd like to know about or learn about. And please subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this on a regular basis. Thank you very much and keep well.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.